Silver has been used as a form of currency by humanity throughout civilization, stretching back to the rise and eventual fall of the Roman Empire. Although most people tend to think of silver as gold's poor sibling, the stunning truth is that silver is the second most used resource on planet Earth, with only King Oil standing above it in the commodity hierarchy. Silver plays a critical role in the construction of all kinds of infrastructure and is a key component in the generation of electricity. Suffice to say, without silver, we would live in a very different and probably less technologically advanced world. On today's episode, we set out to learn the origins and applications of the world's oldest money. From the techniques of the silver mining profession to the multitude of products made with silver, to the history of the collapse of Rome under the weight of government counterfeiting as they turned their back on old silver. Find out what corrupt government politicians in ancient times have in common with the thieves that govern us today. Spoiler alert, pretty much everything. As we dive into one of my favorite commodities of all time, it's silver on Commodity Culture. Silver is a white metallic element that is resistant to corrosion, moisture, and alkalis, and it is basically indestructible on a molecular level. It is moldable and malleable as well, making it ideal to create a variety of goods. Silver is unique in that it serves as a store of value, a medium of exchange, and is also used widely for industrial purposes. Whereas its more known and some would say sexier cousin gold does find some industrial use, including in microprocessors, memory chips, and a lot of technology products, it is by far most valued as a monetary metal. Silver, on the other hand, is the second most used commodity on Earth, lagging behind only oil, and its uses are many, but its scarcity and use throughout history as money make it an ideal unit of transaction, as it is the most fungible of the precious metals, meaning it is divisible into the smallest denominations to make transactions easier. Jewelry is the most obvious product made with silver, and although its main purpose is certainly decorative, silver and gold jewelry can also be used as a store of value and a unit of exchange in times of economic turmoil. The main use of silver, however, is in the fabrication of basically all electronics, and I really do mean that. It has the highest known electrical and thermal conductivity of all the metals, and so is needed to efficiently conduct electricity. Electrical switches, circuit boards, superconductors, electroplating, and well, pretty much anything that uses electricity requires some amount of silver to operate. And remember, this is a finite resource. The supply will run out someday, so don't take silver for granted. Silver is also used to make textiles and clothing, musical instruments, and window applications. And it also plays a role in energy generation, being a key ingredient in solar panels, and is often employed in control rods used to moderate the level of nuclear fission in a nuclear reactor. To learn more about that, check out our episode on uranium. Brazing and soldering requires silver due to its high tensile strength, meaning it is incredibly strong while still being flexible. Silver is even used in the production of chemicals. It acts as a catalyst to produce both formaldehyde, used in the production of solid plastics as a protective coating and as a disinfectant and embalming agent, and ethylene oxide, used for molded plastics and flexible plastics like polyester you find in your clothes. On top of all this, because of its antimicrobial properties, it finds a lot of use medically. It kills bacteria by interfering with their respiration as it absorbs the oxygen around them. Before we had modern medicine and pharmaceutical drugs, silver foil was even laid over wounds to help them heal. In hospitals, silver coats surfaces and medical equipment to protect it from spreading pathogens, and it also finds a lot of use in dentistry for both dental tools and cavity fillings. Silver is required in engine bearings and EV batteries, making it a vital part of the automobile industry, and although the widespread adoption of digital photography has lessened its impact, silver also used to be an essential component of traditional film photography. There are a ton of other uses for silver, but suffice to say, it is one of our most important resources and is a part of almost everything we know as our modern civilization. Now that we've got a handle on what it is used for, let's take a look at how silver is mined. Silver mining's history can be traced back to Anatolia, or modern-day Turkey, in around 3000 BCE. And although there have been a lot of different forms of currency across the ages, silver is one that has stood the test of time, and its implementation as money has allowed civilizations to flourish. By 100 CE, Spain became the center of the silver mining industry, and mines there became a supplier to the Roman Empire. During this time, silver was a highly valued trading component on the Asian spice routes, stretching from Japan's west coast through Indonesia's tropical islands, around India, and into the Middle East and Europe. After Spain conquered the Americas around the year 1500, Mexico, Bolivia, and Peru produced over 85% of the world's silver, and silver mining later spread to the US, Australia, Central America, Canada, Africa, Japan, and many other countries around the world. The silver mined on the planet today comes from two sources: pure silver mining and silver produced as a byproduct of mining for other metals, such as copper, uranium, lead, zinc, and gold. The byproduct scenario is by far most common, with at least 80% of the world's silver being produced alongside other elements. As early era miners were living in a society that needed far less silver than we use today, surface deposits could often be sufficient, and so the trusty pickaxe could extract the ore. As the demand for silver increased, miners needed to journey underground to get to that precious ore, and tools ranged from simple hammers and axes to chisels, wedges, and crowbars, and eventually to drill bits and explosives as mining entered the modern era. Silver ore can be both strong and solid, made up of dense nuggets, or also exists in a more flaky form, mixed with gravel, sand, and other minerals. Open pit mining involves explosives set into holes drilled in the rock around the silver deposit. Miners then blast the rock into smaller pieces and collect the waste rock and ore to be sent to a leach pad or facility for processing. Silver from open pit mines tends to be of a lower grade, and so a large amount of it must be extracted to be profitable. Underground mines are carefully constructed to contain a network of tunnels and chambers that chase a vein of higher grade silver by following it closely, allowing for ideal extraction. Underground mining also uses explosives, but in a more targeted and controlled way, to break apart ore banks in the mining shaft and access that sweet, shiny silver. Ore has to go through an extracting and refining process to become pure silver, and that pure silver can be separated from the ore through flotation, involving a mix of chemicals and slurry, or tank leaching, which uses an agitator tank to mix slurry and cyanide and oxygen, and then add zinc powder to end up with silver precipitate. It's still not over though, because the resulting substance is a silver-bearing mineral concentrate that still needs to have another major metal removed from it. This tends to be either copper or lead, and the separation process differs depending on the secondary metal. All of this to end up with a beautiful metal that I think triggers something primal within our evolutionary psychology after thousands of years of history of silver being used as a form of money. And unfortunately, where there is money, there is greed. And we will next take a look at how an entire empire was brought to its knees due to the debasement of its silver coins at the hands of corrupt politicians. It's a tale as old as time that seems to be repeating itself even today. Silver utensils and ornaments have been discovered in the ancient tombs of Egypt, China, Mesopotamia, Persia, Greece, and more. While highly valued as a decorative status symbol that can double as a store of value, silver's greatest legacy may be its long history as money throughout the ages, and no example stands out more prominently or tragically than Rome's silver denarius. The denarius began to see use in the Roman Republic around 211 BC and stood as its currency for 4 full centuries before collapsing due to debasement at the hands of a greedy and over-leveraged government. Silver was the metal of choice when it came to currency, though gold coinage also saw some brief use in the empire. Although the quantity of silver in the denarius stayed above 90% for a large portion of this time, including a decree set forth by Caesar Augustus in 15 BC that all coins should be in the 95 to 98% range, the cost of running an empire eventually caught up with the Romans. Border defense, walls, administration costs, waging war, infrastructure like roads and aqueducts, and that didn't even count the entertainment and food, famously dubbed bread and circuses, used to distract the populace from government corruption and the fact that those denariuses in their satchels weren't quite buying what they used to. The quality of Rome's currency dropped from the aforementioned 95 to 98% silver content in the time of Caesar Augustus down to 74 to 89% in the era of prominent Stoic philosopher and emperor Marcus Aurelius. By the time the mid-3rd century rolled around, the silver contained in the denarius plummeted to as low as 3%, with 45% being the absolute best quality coins available. There was a direct connection between the size of the Roman Empire and the quantity of silver in its coinage, and in 285 AD, Rome had become so vast and unwieldy that it would be split in two by Emperor Diocletian. The empire's rise was truly impressive, and its fall was no less spectacular. A weakened Rome, laid morally and literally bankrupt by rampant corruption and the government's coin minters, was overrun in 476 by Germanic barbarian tribes, including the Huns, Goths, and Vandals. Fast forward through history, and we find that the United States was also an empire based on using silver as a currency. The American coins minted between 1794 and 1964 contained between 89 and 90% silver, and the US used to hold a vast strategic silver stockpile. When the 13 colonies threw off the yoke of colonial British rule and created America, one of the most pressing issues was creating a common form of currency. Spanish thaler coins formed the basis for the early economy pre-revolution, but a US mint was soon established after the war and began pressing silver dollars in 1794. An early example of currency debasement in the US was the first introduction of silver-backed paper contracts in 1776, the Continental Dollar, one of America's first attempts at a paper form of currency. The costs of waging war got in the way of the celebrated introduction of this currency, however, and it collapsed, leading founding father Thomas Jefferson to remark, "Paper is poverty. It is only the ghost of money, and not money itself." The American government eventually began debasing their coins as well, and by 1976 they removed the last of the silver from them, beginning a long and treacherous cycle of the US government and central banks colluding to remove real money from within the currency and thus have it be backed with nothing more than promises and threats of war by a global superpower. Some economists would say the real beginning of the end for the US dollar as we know it today was when Richard Nixon removed gold backing from the dollar in a supposedly temporary move to allow money to be printed at will to fund the Vietnam War. Once again, war. World conflicts are so connected to the global economy, there's almost always an economic agenda in America's war on terror. Where we stand today is in the shadow of a myriad of events. Silver being removed from coins, and then gold being removed from the dollar, and then the dollar being printed freely, a kind of legal counterfeiting by government cartels. Next was the corrupting of the financial industry, and the insanity of credit default swaps invented in 1994 at JP Morgan. They were largely unregulated, and in the lead up to the financial crisis of 2008, they were a convoluted mess, containing fractions of a variety of obscure financial instruments that were bound to collapse like a house of cards. When it did all collapse, plunging millions into a bleak economic existence and sending shockwaves through the global financial system that is still being felt to this day. The bankers and financial institutions responsible for trading the junk swaps didn't get punished. They got bailed out. Taxpayer money handed to the very criminals that collapsed the system. It was at this moment that I believe morality really began to die in the halls of justice. When those who commit evil in plain sight are rewarded by the government, the end of an empire may be nigh. And the money printing keeps on going, smashing records in the last few years, and it never seems to stop. Money with no real substance to back it will lose its intrinsic value more and more as it is printed into existence at the behest of a corrupt government. And this isn't just happening in America, it is happening worldwide, and there is no telling what the fallout will be from an overinflated government debt spurred on by reckless currency creation. Perhaps like me, you see many parallels between the fall of Rome and our current situation. This is where holding a real form of money like silver can safeguard one's finances from the hidden tax of inflation and the sinister ambitions of the central bank money printers. People around the world are starting to take an interest in holding physical silver to protect their wealth in the case of a persistent and rising inflationary environment. In addition to the rush of retail investors into the silver space, silver is still needed for all the reasons listed at the start of the show, and rumors abound of a supply shortage being inevitable. With this in mind, what does the future look like for silver in the years ahead? Putting its monetary value aside, silver is going to be needed more than ever as an industrial commodity. Every smartphone and desktop and laptop computer made needs silver. And with the ridiculous speed at which companies release new phone models, along with the future rise of developing nations who will want computers, we can see just how important silver is to the future of industry worldwide. When it comes to the massive geopolitical push to prioritize climate change by reducing carbon emissions, silver also wins out here, as it is essential for the construction of electric vehicles, solar panels, and so many other aspects of the green economy that is being strived for. But I should caveat this with my view that a lot of the aspects of the Paris Climate Agreement are little more than political theater to cater to both voter and corporate interests. Regardless, this green infrastructure is being built in many countries as we speak, and to do that, you've got to have silver. Speaking from a monetary standpoint, 2021 saw a massive increase in retail investor interest for physical silver, led by online communities such as Wall Street Silver on Reddit. This movement was largely formed due to disillusionment with the corrupt financial system and record levels of currency debasement and price inflation. For those who choose to hold physical silver, the writing is on the wall when it comes to the global economy, and the Fed can't keep propping up markets like a zombie as they fill the pockets of the 1% without something giving out eventually. Indeed, everyday consumer costs are already rising rapidly, and despite the testimonies of parasitic central bankers who know no other words but lies, this out-of-control inflation is anything but transitory. As we move into an uncertain future, in perhaps one of the most pivotal moments for humanity in recent history, one constant that will remain is the need for silver, and silver is known to thrive in times of uncertainty. Commodity Culture is a series that covers the history and culture surrounding commodities and natural resources. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see more, please subscribe and hit the bell notification to ensure you are always alerted of the latest episodes.